Hey there, Faithful Politics listeners and viewers. If you're joining us on YouTube, guys, thanks so much for coming for another great episode of the Faithful Politics Podcast. I am Josh Bertram. I'm your faithful host. And of course, I have Will. He is your political host. Will, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. Thanks.
Thank you. So we also want you guys to like, subscribe, do the stuff that hacks the algorithm because we really need to get good, sane content out to people right now because there's a lot of insanity out there. And here, we hope you can find a place to listen, debate, wonder, ask questions, and all of the above. And today, we're actually excited to have on the show again Corregan Brown. He's a former startup founder turned civic educator. He teaches with Be the Bridge, helping communities navigate political and racial tension through honest, historically grounded dialogue. Blending his background in technology, leadership, and public engagement, he's working to build both systems and societies that run on integrity, empathy, and truth. Come on, Corrigan. What do you think about that bio?
Hey, I love it. I really appreciate that intro. So I'm here in a personal capacity, but I appreciate you giving the context for who I am and how I make a living and how I see the world.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Thanks again for coming on, Corrigan. So you and I, just to give our audience a sense, you've been on the show before, talked with us years ago. I think it was in 2020 was the last time. So it's been quite a bit. And then, but you and I, we've kept in contact. We've all kept in contact. Will's kept in contact with you. And I got to say, I really love seeing your posts online. I feel like you're one of the guys out there that I'm quite certain that there are several things that we probably disagree with or disagree on pretty significantly. And yet I find myself when I read your post feeling convinced, feeling like I want to listen to what you're saying because you're so good at articulating. I'm really not trying to toot your horn. I really, really think that is true. And I think it's a model. And that's kind of what we want to do today is kind of talk about this idea of how do we debate? How do we argue? How do we do this in the public square about really, really, really controversial issues? And we can even focus it online because all three of us, we have a significant online presence, putting things out there. We get trolled. We get people angry at us, all that stuff throughout the years, and yet we want to keep doing it. So I kind of want to throw this out there, and this will be a fairly free-flowing conversation. I have some prompts for us, but I want to set us up with this line. In anxious societies, argument isn't what breaks us, it's what reveals what we've already broken. In anxious societies, argument isn't what breaks us, it reveals what we've already broken. I would love to just kind of open it up for you guys, and I can give my thoughts on that too. But what do you think about that statement? True, not true? How does it resonate with you?
I think it dovetails nicely with one of my core beliefs around where we are in discourse and in societal progress. And that core belief is we will keep repeating the mistakes we've made over and over or doing rhyming mistakes until we really reckon with our past and face who we've been. In Be the Bridge, there's a 9-step process. I actually recommend all the Christian listeners especially. I think Be the Bridge has something for everyone, but it is targeted at a Christian audience and a biblical model of reconciliation, especially around race. And you move through these 9 steps, and step 1 is acknowledgement. Hey, something bad happened. Step 2 is kind of awareness. It's like, yes, this thing happened, and I feel bad about it. And as you start to move into this guilt and shame step, I'm going to process how I feel bad, how I feel responsible, how I feel embarrassed, and I'm going to move through that. And I think our society is really difficult, has a really difficult time at moving through that. Starting with the acknowledgement, moving through a lament step where like, hey, this really wasn't good that it happened. And then moving into that, and I feel bad about it. And then moving forward and going, how am I responsible? How can I be accountable? And so if you don't do that stuff, there's brokenness that is going to continue to bubble up as these comments, as these anxiety, as the polarization. And, we have to get tougher at looking at our past. I mean, I could rant about this forever. I'll say one more thing and then I'll kind of hand the mic off. We have no trouble as a society thinking about how the founding fathers' positive values, the ideas around freedom and individual liberty and all those things persevere through the generations and are handed down from generation to generation. Yet somehow when we look at these shadow values, right, racism, dehumanization, misogyny, we don't understand how those could possibly pass from generation to generation. Why didn't they die last time? Right? And so I think it's about looking with a clear eye and with equanimity, understanding that positive things can be passed down and negative things can be passed down.
I want to focus in a little bit on your Be the Bridge work, because I'm in the process of reading Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam, and a lot of his theories about social capital, bonding, bridging, and whatnot. And I'm seeing something happen in our country that I think is fundamental to a lot of the thesis, or with the thesis that Putnam makes in his book. And that's, we bond with each other, people that are like us, and then we bridge, to get to know other people, like the sense of, who knows a good mechanic to fix X. Generally the answer to that question is someone that is connected. That means that we don't know somebody, so we know somebody, therefore our lives instantly get better because we don't have a broken thing. This administration seems to be creating barriers, if not outright destroying some of these bridges between communities. And I'd love for you just to kind of wax eloquent on what you see, as being kind of the outcome of that. And if you're seeing any of the outcomes of that already presenting itself, I would love to know.
There's a lot of things going through my brain. I just attended a conference where it's put on by a marketing firm, Constellation Research. They do market research, futurism, predictions. And it was about kind of the state of technology with respect to AI, a little bit of quantum computing, a little looking at geopolitics and how all that's playing together. And the upshot for me was, in order to realize the promise of that, we're going to have to kind of fundamentally retool our civilization and think about how humans interact differently. We've been on this track since the Enlightenment of increasing individualization, maximizing individual behavior. And I think there is a conflict between this idea of individual liberty to the exclusion of community and this idea of interdependence that the early church modeled, that many societies prior to the current iteration have modeled, and that we do tend to model when we're at our best in our family lives. And so it really comes down to that old parable question: who is my neighbor? Right? I think the people I think of as my neighbor, I'm going to enter into interdependence with, I'm going to have relationship with. And if you are not my neighbor, then in a world of individual maximization, you are my enemy. And so I think what we are seeing is an ideology that says most people are not my neighbor, right? I think, and out of that comes, well, protect the homeland, right? Protect the unit.
Right.
And who gets to be in the homeland, right? People who believe as I do. People who look like I do. People who look like they could be in my family, even if they're not in my family, right? And so it's this notion of what is my family unit, right? Kind of this extension of myself that I'm trying to protect. And what is my community unit? The neighbor that I have chosen to love as myself. And then what is outside? And so I think we've really, what we are building, as AI is accelerating stuff, what we are building is a society that is doing the values that we haven't worked out faster and louder. And
Yes.
so, as we haven't figured this out, we're separating more and more. That's the social media stuff, right? That's where, the algorithm is kind of sycophantically building us a walled garden where everyone who looks like me and thinks like me is inside and everyone else is outside. And so in order to fight against such an ideology, we have to be fierce about separating principle and policy. The thing that I think I occasionally forget is that, these people who believe very different things than me, they also want healthy children, happy children to grow up. They want to be able to go on vacation occasionally. They want a fulfilling purpose in life, right? We want the same things and we deeply disagree about how to get to them. And so if we start from a principle place, and I see you doing this a lot, Josh, you really are gifted in meeting people lovingly, no matter how caustically they come at you, and grounding them in principle. Right? Like, hey, you're like, hey, that's great that you called me a monster. I understand why you would feel that way. I mean, I'm kind of being sarcastic, but it's not that you wouldn't say that's great, but you would say, hey, I understand why you think that this thing I believe is monstrous. But here's the principle I'm rooted in when I'm saying that. How do you feel about that principle, right? I do it because I think this is the best way to love kids, right? And then they go like, well, I love kids too. And then now we can start to have a conversation and then we can build policy. And so I kind of went around the houses a little bit, Will. If you want me to zoom in on a little bit more around what the administration is doing, let me know.
I mean, I'm sure we'll get there in this conversation. I'm quite certain it'll come up. So I want to think about the idea of of the United States as in this democracy, this constitutional republic that is representational, democratic. If we imagine it as a body in the circulatory system, maybe could be part of it is argument and dialogue. This kind of we're hoping that in a pluralistic democratic society, people use words instead of violence to achieve their means, right? This is what I think an ideal, I hope that we can all be on board with. What do you guys imagine is the pulse rate right now? How are we doing in this argumentation debate space? And I know it's maybe almost like people are you going to anticipate the answer? But I do want to ask it. Where do you guys think our pulse rate is right now? A little bit for me, I feel like it's kind of barely there. There are signs though of life, and I want to focus on that for me. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, and even Will, your thoughts on this.
Oh, are you asking me first?
Either way, sorry.
I mean, if you're referring to, if you're connecting pulse rate with quality of debate or presence of debate, I would probably agree with you. I would think we're reaching a point where we're practically flatlining because people just aren't debating. They're not talking. It's kind of like the government shutdown right now, right? Like it's affecting so many people, second longest in history. And yet it's like not even like the number one story, like it's above the fold, like it's just like, it's a thing that's happening back here. And people are just sort of living their lives. And even like when I talk to people that vehemently disagree with me about politics, we don't even talk about it. Like, and there's not even like, oh, it's a Dem's fault. Oh, it's the Republicans' fault. It's like, no, it's just a thing that's here. And it's almost like we've gotten to a point, I believe, in this country where people don't want to debate because people don't want to get canceled. And I think a lot of it boils down to that. Like, right, I follow, speaking of algorithms, my algorithm, like if a stranger picked up my phone and was looking through my Facebook or social media, they would immediately think I was probably some MAGA person, because most of the news I consume are all right leaning. I read Newsmax and National
That's
Review and
interesting.
Fox News, and like the suggested groups that you have on Facebook. We're all probably old. We're probably the only people on the planet on Facebook, but like the suggested groups on there are like white pride, liberal
serious,
media. I mean, literally, these are the things that come up my feed because I'm a member of some of these groups. Anyways, I say all that because, like, one of the people I follow is posting images of protesters from the No Kings protest, that are, that's making fun of like the Charlie Kirk murder or whatever, and which is horrible, despicable. But also, like, if that's what you're choosing to post, from this rally, then you're going to get people seeing that and like, oh, I don't want to end up, on this person's like feed, like, and this person's a pretty well-known MAGA person, millions of followers. They even got like a honorary, I don't know, general, no, or colonel like rank by Secretary of Defense. So I think that we're not debating, we're not talking because people are afraid to debate and to talk. And to be honest, like, I mean, we are to some degree as well, because we both have livelihoods, and we sort of walk that fine line where we're like, man, I'd really love to just be able to talk about this. But I mean, just given the response to some of our episodes, like I don't think we're in a place where we could bet that nobody's going to try to go after our livelihoods if we say something wrong.
Yeah, no, that is a big concern.
Yeah.
I try to thread that needle, obviously, making sure that everybody knows what hat I have on, proverbially speaking, whenever I'm speaking in any context.
Makes sense.
Representing only myself, making sure I'm not representing my company or any nonprofits I work for inappropriately or any of that kind of stuff. But I think, and medical professionals who are listening, please forgive me if I get some of these analogies wrong. But I think if we're talking about the circulatory system, the two things that come to mind for me are blood poisoning and compartment syndrome. So, the blood poisoning is this polarization, this idea that are, number one, the truly monstrous beliefs, ethnic cleansing beliefs, like this notion of remigration, being normalized, the kind of Leni Riefenstahl energy that is coming from all of the ads for our different departments, that and the poisonous discourse. And so I'm going to both sides for just a moment, but I want to be clear. I think both sides are equally capable of problematic things. I think the things that are happening right now are not the same and symmetrical on both sides. So you will frequently hear me give, thank you. You will frequently hear me give one critique, one major critique of kind of the discourse on the left. I think if the right's weakness right now is they will find one thing to agree with and allow all these other monstrous things to come alongside, the left's weakness is if I find one thing to disagree with, nothing else you say is valid. And that so that's the compartment syndrome, right? We're not allowing ideas to flow to the parts of the body that need them. And so I think we have to, there is a line, right? Like, getting to your original question that you asked at the top of the podcast, I don't think there's a meaningful dialogue that I can have with a Nazi operating from that place. right?
Right.
They
Right.
are still a human. They still have ideas. And if they say, hey,
Yes.
I'm going to take the Nazi hat off for a second, bring my principles into the room, and we'll start there, and neither of us will talk policy
Right.
until we understand each other's principles, that's a conversation I can have. But most people aren't, who are that far
Hmm.
along, aren't doing that. And I think another thing that is happening, and you've heard me critique this online many times, power differentials. I think the discourse on the right lacks a power differential analysis. So
Yes.
a random TikToker, says screw Charlie Kirk or screw Trump, and that is held as if Nancy Pelosi said it. Right? Meanwhile,
That's a
like
great
sitting,
point.
yeah. Meanwhile, sitting congressmen like have Confederate flags in their offices, have crypto swastikas in their American flags, have said, given very white nationalist commentary, and people just go, same, same. And I'm like,
Boys
these
will be
people have,
boys. Boys will be boys.
right, these people have significant power. They have significant ability to shape discourse, to shape policy. The TikToker has influence over coffee talk, generally speaking, by and large. And so
Yes.
that's I think we have to get a little more honest
Yes.
about what it means for a powerful person to say something.
Corrigan, I really like. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
Oh,
Will.
I was just gonna say two things, but I can only remember one about the Nazi flag thing. The every time I read that story, it's like for those that are nerds in the audience, and I don't know how big that world is, but like if you watch Peacemaker on HBO, the entire last season was about like him trying to get away from his current life to enter into a new one, but didn't realize that the new life he was getting into was absent of any people of color, but instead it was actually spoiler alert, it was a world where the Nazis won and they were like in charge of everything. So all the American flags have like little Nazi symbols on them. And he passed by them a bunch of times and never once noticed it until somebody like was like, there's a Nazi flag there. And he's like, oh, how did I miss that? And then there's like a big mural of like Hitler, and it was just like, it was such a like great encapsulation of kind of what a lot of we feel like people are doing today. It's like, oh, like they only recognize it was bad because someone had to point it out to them that it was bad. But it was something that was very systemic and kind of the bloodstream, to use your analogy. Go ahead, Josh.
I really love it. Well, so this is getting a couple ideas sparked in my mind. The first thing is that I was having an online debate, whatever, posting. I like this stuff. This is good. We need this. So I don't say it in any negative way at all, but with actually my cousin, and he's very articulate, very intelligent. He's, I think, an atheist is my guess, but he grew up Christian like me, but then, took a different path. And one of the things that I pointed out, and because I've been posting on Christian nationalism, what I want to do is I want, as neutrally as I can, to bring out, hey, this is what the statement on Christian nationalism and the gospel says. Here's what it says. Here's what the implications are. I'm trying to do that. Well, anyway, he posted on one of those things, and he was basically like, I don't really have anything to respond because this is a Christian debate. And as we were like working through it, one of the things that came like that kind of a realization to me, and this is something I've thought about, so maybe it's not a realization, but it just kind of came back into the fore of my mind, was that not all worldviews are created equal. And I'll tell you right now, and I kind of will prove that here, I think. Going to your point, Corrigan, thinking about Nazi ideology. If you think about Nazi ideology, it is a comprehensive ideology, not a good one, in many ways defunct and corrupt, obviously. But it has ritual, it has creed, it has policy, it has worship, even things that people can be a part of, and identity. It confers identity, and you think about that, and yes, that is a I don't want to say legitimate because I don't want to invite that connotation, but it is a full worldview, even though
Yes,
it's a
internally consistent.
yes, and it is, and yet it is reprehensible to us and should be. And so I was thinking about this. So on the one side we have that, and I was basically saying like how the context of it is how do we determine which worldviews should influence our law, which worldviews are appropriate to bring in to influence our law, kind of where do we ground morality, and how do we go into those principles like you were mentioning, Corrigan, and how do we do this? And let me take a pause there and go to this, death threat or whatever we got or whatever. I don't want to make a big deal about that. It was like a post that was kind of nasty in what it said. But anyway, someone posted on that and said they agreed with it. And the argument they said was that two men who are in their mind privileged don't have to be afraid of the asymmetrical power. Her point was asymmetrical power means that if you take both sides, you're actually that's not courage, that is cowardice essentially, and it's just giving in to the power structures. And I would love to throw this out there because, man, on one hand, I totally get it. It's like, yeah, we're just going to give in to the power because it's there. And yet it seemed like for her, there was no point of dialogue. None. Because that point is gone. And I would love to get your thoughts on that because it seems like that's not at all what we're trying to achieve in this show. It's the exact opposite. We feel like we're trying to bring our own healing in this way. I would just love to hear, because we started talking about the idea of power dynamics and how we identify that in our argument.
Yeah. I think I saw that thread. I almost weighed in, but I thought it would be wiser for me not to. There is a statement by Marcus Aurelius, and it's something about like there are all these things that are not that don't have need of your opinion, and he says these things are not asking to be judged by you. Leave them alone. And I swear, if I could make Facebook start and print that for like 10 seconds before skip ad, I would do it. It is such a useful reminder to me. And there is a place like there is a place in a lane. Like I think it was appropriate for you to respond, and I think as usual, your response was really thoughtful. And I think speaking to that specifically, people are very wounded. There is an ideology that where the underlying principle, and so this gets into that principle conversation, right? So I'm having this conversation with the fictional Nazi with their Nazi hat off, and we go, hey, what are your principles? Right. I go, no human being is disposable. And they go, some human beings should rule over other human beings, right? Like, we do not have a principle agreement. We either have to work that out or the conversation has to end. There's no point in me wagging my finger at how awful the outworkings of your policy are, the concentration camps and the deportations, if we have not addressed the fact that I don't believe humans are disposable and you do. Right. So I think a lot of people, especially on the left, that's my experience. It is possible there are a lot of people experience this. I think there probably are a lot of moderately conservative Christians on the right that are also experiencing this pain of feeling misunderstood. I think it comes from different places, but there's ultimately a feeling of my nuance is being dismissed. And I'm sure it hurt y'all a little bit to have your nuance dismissed in that way, right? Like, it's...
Absolutely.
It is hard to... It is less interesting to assume that a person is deluded and just needs education. And it is more interesting to assume that their position is internally inconsistent and be curious about how they got there. And so, I think we often, and this is something we teach, Elizabeth Behrens from Be the Bridge and I taught a course on bias. And one of the things that we teach is a lot of times people think data and education. I think the left particularly loves this, right? They love to take a bunch of data and stats and education and correct. If you understood this, then you would know. But ultimately, I'm operating from a place of heart. I'm operating from a place of principle. I'm not operating from the stuff in my brain. I grab the stuff that is brainy stuff that seems to match what's in here. But we got to get to in here.
Yes.
Yeah, all of that makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of it, one, I think is probably somewhat grounded in scripture, and the other is also grounded in like psychological science, because I think, Josh will testify that probably one of my favorite lines is, you can't have revelation without relationship, and I truly believe that. I've never tried to change a mind of somebody that I didn't have a connection to, because it would just be a fool's errand. So I try to at least just listen if I don't know them very well. And on the psychological science side, it's kind of like, the comments that we get, yeah, sometimes they do hurt, because like we do put our full selves into this project. We don't collect a paycheck, like we both have full-time jobs. Like, it's really just a passion of ours, but it's also ministry, because we don't want to just sit idly by while we watch the world burn and then just be like, oh man, I really wish people would talk to more people, about things they disagree on. So, but I also recognize that everybody kind of has these like social emotional triggers. And sometimes for some, it could be that I'm a man. Being a man could be a social trigger for somebody. Being a Republican could be a social trigger to somebody. We spoke with Preston Sprinkle recently, and he was like, I gave the exact same talk to two different groups and got two completely different reactions. One group was favorable to my argument, and the other group was not. And he was like, but the message was intended to be somewhat neutral. I'm paraphrasing kind of what he's saying, but it's just like, he came into this other group. He was talking about same-sex marriage, and he went to this one group, and already he walked into the room as a white man, a Christian, and then all the sort of like baggage that may carry for some group. So it's like, when you're trying to build bridges with people, I mean, like, how do you do that when it's like as you just approach that person, you start noticing things like, I don't know, maybe they have a Gadsden flag sticker on their car, or right. They have like a Pride or Coexist sticker, and you're like, oh man, or like a different football team. So like, how do you get through that?
That is a difficult question.
Oh, that is a good question.
It is good because it is making us really dig. I was thinking this morning about some of this stuff, and I was trying to figure out how I would view that. And I think one of the things is, understanding neutrality and what neutrality means, right? So we are all in this invisible atmosphere that is like 78% nitrogen, 21-ish% oxygen, trace elements. And it is perfectly suited for us and our well-being, and it feels fine. And we just think of it as nothing. We don't think about it. But it has tremendous impacts, right? There are hurricanes and tornadoes, and, if that balance goes off, there are other creatures that don't do well, and that kind of thing. And so I think understanding the air we're breathing, the water we're in, whatever analogy you prefer, the temperature, right? So like when it's 70 degrees and sunny, we don't say there is no temperature. But that is what we do in dialogue, right? We take a position, like a vector, a point in time and space, that is suited to a particular set of circumstances or ideas, and we go, well, that's just neutral, right? Like, and I am not questioning this person's approach. I'm assuming they did it the best way they could. But so I'm not trying to comment on them. But I'm saying, let's say I enter a space and want to talk about same-sex lifestyle. lifestyle is a coded word. And when you say that to anybody who is kind of pro LGBTQ, freedom to exist and do what they wish, they're going to hear, you don't believe that my love and my identity is as valid as yours. And that is going to set off a whole set of triggers. And so I think understanding where the minds are, I think laying groundwork and going, hey, we believe different things. I think that's pretty obvious. I want to have, so first off, having relationship, having coffee relationship or whatever, right? Like having a relationship where I even want to speak with you about the weather. But then laying framework going, I'd like to have a difficult conversation. I'm probably going to screw it up. I'm going to ask for grace explicitly, and I'm going to ask you to be gracious as well and not indict my beliefs. And let's start there and let's pick one thing. So I'm trying to think, let's say there's a Gadsden flag guy and he and I have been running into each other at the gym and we like the same workouts or whatever. And so we decide to meet up for coffee. And I want to talk. And so we have enough of a relationship where now I want to broach this. And I'll go, I think I have to go like, hey, I know this is rough territory. I'm not trying to, I set it all up and then I can ask a curious question. What does "don't tread on me" mean to you? Right. I was in a ride share the other day, yesterday. And it was interesting. I was listening to the guy talk and he was talking about self-determination. He's like, the government's not going to help us. He's talking self-determination for Black people. He's like, government's not going to help us. We've got to start building our own things. And I was kind of sitting there like, which way are we going? Are we going Black nationalists? Are we going militant? Are we going general self-sufficiency? And I had to kind of and I just sit, wait for it, and let it land where it lands. And I think that kind of, that were triggers for me that were firing. And I had to stop and go, no, I'm going to listen. I'm going to show grace and I'm going to hear what they're actually saying. And so I'll land the plane with this. That person who indicted y'all as two privileged men, I feel like out of their pain, they were not actually listening to the literal words coming out of your mouth. Right. They associated them with triggers and they made 2 or 3 steps down the road and go, this person is privileged man. He's a Christian man. He's just like that pastor that hurt me, just like that sanctimonious Christian person I work with. And I don't want to deal with them. But you didn't say anything that I saw as hurtful. But of course, in fairness, there may have been something in there because this is the eagle and the hawk or the eagle and the owl sitting around going, I don't know what Mr. Mouse was talking about.
Sure, dude. I like that, actually. I like that a lot. It's kind of like this one idea of democracy where, pure democracy is kind of like 2 wolves and a sheep arguing over what's for dinner. And so we want to, have, we want to have some protections for the sheep, and say, hey, that whole dinner conversation, let's not put that on the table, in this way. So here's the last question, that I would throw out there for us to kind of roll with. So of course, the spirit of our show is we want to hear what people really think. We want to enter into these difficult spaces to talk about them. And that spirit has been very clear in Corregan, how you've handled yourself online and the things I've seen, but not a lack of willingness to challenge. And I really appreciate that. Here's my question. What stops, what's lost, or what is already lost, or what are we losing when we stopped debating, when we stopped arguing in the technical term of that, not the fighting, the argumentation theory, which is a real academic discipline? What's lost, not just politically, but even morally, imaginatively, spiritually? What do you guys think is lost?
I think we cannot we cannot advance without an open place to challenge ideas and to allow space for compromise. Now, so compromise is a very, very loaded word. I think that we have different roles to play. Ta-Nehisi Coates, in his interview with Ezra Klein, said, hey, I'm a writer. I'm supposed to just call this stuff like I see it. It's not my job to come up with a compromise idea that would work for everyone. It's a politician's job to do that, right? To come up with something that kind of nobody likes but advances things a little bit forward. But I think we have a responsibility to each other to continue the principled discourse of ideas and kind of that debate, and to, again, operate from the place of principle and not policy, and be honest about what is informing us. Like everything that has, people love to make fun of Kamala Harris for that adage her mother said, you didn't fall out of a coconut tree. But the really important part is you exist in the context of everything that is around you and that has come before you, right? And so really, I think the responsibility that we have, regardless of where we fall on the spectrum, is just be honest about it. If you were informed by Confederate political ideology or a Nazi political ideology, like, be honest about it. If you were informed by, if you're informed by Marxism, like, own it and understand what that might mean and what its limitations are. And then let's, from there, I think we can start to have gracious and principled conversation.
Is that helpful? Like that. I'll add, it's very helpful. And I would throw this out. It's a hard question. I mean, that's why there is the silence there, right? We have to think about it. And I think, just piggybacking on what you said, and then Will would love to hear your thoughts after I say this, is that I think what's lost is common ground. And I know it sounds strange to say, well, what do you mean if we're not arguing, we're losing common ground? That's exactly the point, because argumentation actually brings out what is common ground, because you have to have a set of agreed principles, like you're saying. And at the point at which the controversy exists, pinpointing that is difficult, right? And it does mean going back and looking like, where is the actual rub in this issue? Like you said, is this about, I don't really think that people are disposable versus people are not disposable, right? That was the controversy, right? In that theoretical scenario, that was the controversy. Like, Will, I've heard you say many times about abortion. The issue is, when does life begin? So what you're doing is you're actually pinpointing the controversy. What is it? Where does it actually exist? And so many times we argue with people about things they're not saying and things they don't mean. And it's like, wait, no, let's get to the controversy, because Will and I both agree we don't want to kill babies. We both agree that women should be free. We both agree that, any number of things that would lead us up into this controversy. Well, where is the actual issue? And even today I was like, well, because we're in another conversation, I was like, actually, I think it's not even about life as much as it is about personhood. At what point is there a person? So I was even shifting the controversy. And why am I doing that? Because if we're not talking about the specific area of controversy, then we're not really talking to each other.
Right. And before you jump in, Will, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you got it.
I'm done. Go ahead.
Yeah, like, and before I'm done. Before we hand off, I wanted to also say it's really important that we unbundle our thinking. I think we have all fallen across the political spectrum into a coalition thinking trap. I believe this, and so I believe this unrelated thing, and I believe this unrelated thing, right? It is possible that someone believes the government should fund food banks for everybody, and they believe that life begins at conception, and they believe that gay marriage is a sin, but the government should allow it because that's a contract, not a covenant, right? Like, you could hold a set of things that would not make one party happy. And I think it's really important for us to identify where we are engaging in coalition thinking, because we can find these very narrow patches of common ground that we can build on if we unbundle our thinking.
I like that.
Yeah. So, in answer to your question earlier, Josh, about, sort of the consequences of not having dialogue. I mean, I've long believed that we should all be exposed to ideas that are different than our own. I think I mentioned that earlier. Like most of the news I consume is all conservative, and I'm a liberal, because I feel like ideas are a lot like vaccines. Like we should be inoculated to different ideas, so that way we maybe not necessarily immunity might be too strong of a word, but at least our bodies will recognize what it is that we are exposed to. So like if we are going to pinpoint the actual main argument that we disagree on, we'll never get to that point if we're not at least talking. So like if we're talking about Christian nationalism, one side might say Christian nationalism is X, Y, and Z, and the other side might say no, Christian nationalism is A, B, and C. But unless you actually get a chance to talk, you'll never be able to know where that is. And I would even extend this to maybe the talking to a Nazi who is or isn't living the hashtag Nazi life, because I think that like how you approach or how you begin that conversation, your entry point into that conversation, I think will largely dictate how the rest of it's going to go. So if you automatically go into the conversation with a viewpoint that you articulate that is going to be triggering to that person, then you're going to get a completely different outcome. But part of that is, one, you have to realize that there are things we say that do trigger other people. So it's like that's the first step. But then the second step is just trying to find that entry point. Like I shared with who did I share this with? I've shared this a couple times, but when we think about how polarized we are, it's easy to just not be able to see. Our cognitive biases have trained us to not be able to see the things that we do agree on. It's like we're just so used to just being polarized, And then whenever I mentioned the three following things, I'm like, most people, want term limits for Congress members. Most people don't like that their politicians can do insider trading. I was like, and most people want the Epstein files released. like I haven't met a single person that was like, no, Congress members should be able to trade on the stock market, with all of their insider information.
They should get an unfair advantage over all other Americans.
Yeah. And I haven't met a single person that's like, no, we should keep those Epstein files under lock and key forever until a Democrat, is in office or something, which would be a good argument in a way. So it's like if we're not inoculating ourselves with different ideas, we're just gonna end up more in our in group, and we're going to make it harder to bridge, to kind of bring it back to the work that Corrigan's doing. We're going to make it harder to actually see the other people and have those connections. The one last thing I'll say is just dealing with the military. So as a former military guy, my veteran chat group is comprised of a Japanese, Brazilian, Mexican, black guy, two white guys, and then myself. So two black guys, two Asian, a Vietnamese guy. That's my chat group of my military buddies. I would never be able to assemble that diverse of a group if I tried, in the normal world, But that's because I was given an opportunity to bridge, to actually get to meet them, to know them, and then engage in conversations. And most of them are all Trumpers, they know where I feel, they know where I stand on it, but and they just poke fun, and we poke fun at each other, and, we just kind of cross our fingers that our text messages never make it public. But if they did, we wouldn't be a bunch of Nazis. So that's the positive thing.
Right. And, and I think that is important for people to be able to hold as well. I think especially on the left, people go, you're friends with Trumpers. Trumpers want me dead or gone. You are complicit. And I think there is work to do on the inside through authentic relationships that were built for other reasons. And there's work to do on the outside. And I think we have to allow space for both of those things and not write someone like you off because you're able to maintain friendships, especially when people hear about, oh, we joke about it and stuff. But that's part of managing the tension, right? When you are in tension with someone about something that's deeply held belief, you do kind of make inappropriate jokes and stuff because you have to manage that tension while you're navigating the relationship. And so I think it's really important to call that out and, try to minimize the number of biblical curses and death threats you get as a result of acknowledging that you are friends with the other side.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Corrigan, for hanging out with us, chatting for a little bit. It's always good just kind of chit chat with you. For Be the Bridge, is there a place where people can find it?
Yeah, BeTheBridge.com is their site. I'm the newest member of the board. We're having a board meeting next week, so I'm really excited about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about helping to continue to shape that vision and provide a way for us to have an honest conversation about our history. Be suspicious of anyone who is telling you to not look at historical facts.
Come on, somebody.
And so I think Be the Bridge is a fantastic resource. There are Christians of various walks of life that are participating. There are non-Christians participating. But it is rooted in an understanding of Scripture and the Bible. And so I think it is a great resource for Christians in this country especially.
Awesome. That's really cool. Well, again, thanks so much for stopping by. Always a pleasure to chit chat with you and to our audience. Thank you for stopping by and listening to us. And as always, make sure you keep your conversations not right or left, but up. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.